Welcome to This Explainer. Look, let's just be completely honest for a second. If you've been grinding away at the financial markets, staring at candlestick charts until your eyes blur, buying up every new technical indicator, or maybe lurking in Discord groups hoping some guru holds the magic secret, only to still lose money? Well, I have a pretty harsh reality for you based on the material we're looking at today. Your strategy alone is never going to be enough. So many people jump into trading thinking it's purely a numbers game, right? Like it's just a math puzzle to be solved with the perfect algorithm. But as we unpack the course source material today, you'll see a completely different picture. The truth is, the strategy isn't your main problem. You are. Today, we're focusing entirely on the internal psychology of trading. Because honestly, before you can ever hope to conquer the markets, you've got to conquer yourself. So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to break this down into 5 key areas. First, the true trading battleground. Second, normal versus successful traders. Third, the trap of result attachment. Fourth, rewiring your dopamine. And finally, the path to mastery. Let's dive right into section 1, the true trading battleground. Okay, take a look at this breakdown. Notice that massive slice taking up a full 80% of the visual? That represents your psychology. And that remaining tiny 20% slice, that's your trading strategy. This is probably the single most misunderstood rule in trading. Most people literally spend 100% of their time, energy, and money trying to perfect that tiny 20% strategy slice. And it makes sense, right? Buying a new algorithm or backtesting a moving average, it feels productive. But sitting alone in a quiet room, actually confronting your own greed, your impatience, or your deep-seated anxiety, yeah, that's uncomfortable. So the vast majority of beginners just completely ignore that massive 80% psychological slice that actually dictates their success. But here's the thing, you can have the most brilliant, mathematically sound setup in the world, but if your mind is chaotic, you will find a way to sabotage it. The battle is entirely internal. Before you see a winning streak in your external portfolio, you have absolutely got to secure a winning streak inside your own head. Which brings us to a really foundational quote from our source material. Everything starts with the mind. If you talk to anyone who is consistently profitable, they'll tell you that their success started with a fundamental shift in their belief system. Let's look at a concrete example of how this actually plays out. Say a trader inherently believes the market is, rigged against them. Well, every single loss just confirms that negative bias. They take the loss as a personal attack, which naturally leads to anger. But on the flip side, if a trader has absolute conviction that their system has a proven edge, a loss is totally depersonalized. It's no longer a threat, it's just a standard business expense. Your internal state, meaning your specific beliefs about risk and probability, completely dictates your external financial reality. Moving on to section 2, normal versus successful traders. To really understand how to build that 80% psychological edge, let's break down the physical and mental states of 2 very different characters. Let's start with the normal trader. Their primary focus. It's always the money. Picture this person for a second. They're sweating, their heart is racing, they're staring at every single tick on a 1-minute chart at 3 a.m., just actively praying for a crypto coin to bounce. They are constantly calculating their potential profit or loss in real time. And because they're hyper-focused on the cash, they become deeply emotionally attached to the result of this one specific trade. Now, contrast that with the successful trader. Their focus is completely on the strategy. They know exactly what their proven setup looks like. When the market presents that setup, they enter the trade, they input a rational stop loss, and then, they just walk away. They go make a cup of coffee. They completely trust the setup. They aren't trying to force the market to do anything. They're just rationally executing their edge. That brings us to section 3, the trap of result attachment. I want you to really think about this question for a second. Why do we revenge trade? Let's walk through a super common scenario. You enter a trade and bam, you lose $500. In that exact moment, your human brain doesn't just see a number on a screen. It actually registers that loss as a literal physical threat. Your fight or flight response kicks in. Panic sets in. You feel this burning, urgent need to instantly undo the pain, right? So what happens? You immediately increase your lot size and jump right back into the market on a terrible, unproven setup, just praying to get back to break even. At that point, you are no longer trading the market. You're desperately trying to fix your bruised ego with money. And that reactive habit, it's operating entirely from a place of fear and greed. And it's exactly these specific reactive habits that destroy trading accounts. Normal traders get overly euphoric on wins, falsely believing they somehow magically control the market. And then they get deeply depressed on losses, which leads right into that revenge trading spiral we just talked about. Think about this from the perspective of running a business. Would a successful restaurant owner literally burn down their entire kitchen just because one customer sent a steak back? No, of course not. That would be insane. Yet normal traders will happily burn down their entire financial account over one bad trade, simply because they lack emotional discipline. It really highlights the absolute absurdity of letting reactive habits dictate your actions instead of just relying on a proven setup. Just look at the massive difference in the emotional energy shown here. The normal trader is living on a violent roller coaster, massive emotional spikes when a trade is up and crushing lows when it drops. Look, you just cannot survive long-term with that kind of cortisol constantly pumping through your veins. Now point your attention to the specific, steady baseline of the successful trader. How exactly is this flat, calm baseline achieved? It's achieved entirely through rational risk management. When you use proper position sizing, say only risking 1% of your total account on any given trade, the emotional spike is mathematically neutralized. A 1% loss isn't a threat to your livelihood, it's just data. By removing that outsized financial risk, you naturally remove the emotional volatility, and that's what allows you to maintain this beautifully disciplined baseline.
All right, section 4, rewiring your dopamine.
So how do we actually transition from that chaotic roller coaster to that steady baseline? Well, you have to fundamentally rewire how your brain experiences rewards. Society, and honestly millions of years of human evolution, train us to get our dopamine hit from a direct, tangible reward. In this case, cash. But to be a successful trader, you kind of have to actively fight human evolution. You must shift your dopamine release away from the financial outcome and attach it exclusively to the flawless execution of your checklist. You have to train yourself to feel genuinely satisfied simply because you followed your rules perfectly, regardless of whether the trade won or lost. It's tough, but you must completely detach from the immediate cash reward. You've got to find your confidence in your discipline rather than your daily P&L. A massive part of this psychological rewiring is truly internalizing what the source material calls the binary outcome. Here's the reality. Once you place an entry based on your setup and you've set your target and your stop loss, the trade only has two possible destinations. It's either going to win or it's going to lose. There is no magical third option. It is essentially a coin flip, but a coin flip where your strategy gives you a slight mathematical edge. So if you've already accepted the rational risk before you entered and you know there are only two paths, dealing with mid-trade anxiety is completely illogical. Accepting the binary outcome completely eliminates the need to sit there and stare at the chart. You just let the coin land. Take a look at how these two mindsets handle the inevitable losing trade. The normal trader operates out of pure desperation. A loss causes them to abandon their rules, add more risk, and completely spiral emotionally. They're acting exactly like a gambler on tilt. The successful trader, however, they become a scientist. They look at the loss and ask objective questions, like, did the strategy just not work out this time, or did I actually break my own rules? They log it in a journal, they collect the data, they stay brutally honest about their execution. For them, a loss isn't a reflection of their self-worth. It's simply a piece of feedback used to refine their edge. The difference is literally night and day. And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, the path to mastery. Let's take just a brief second to reflect on the journey we've mapped out in this explainer today. We've talked about the trap of revenge trading, that 3 a.m. chart-stirring panic, the absolute necessity of dopamine rewiring, and the logic of binary outcomes. And all of these concepts, they funnel down into this one undeniable truth from our source material. You have to win internally before you win externally. If you do not have rational control over your emotions, the market will eventually take all of your money. It is not a matter of if, but when. So, how do we practically enforce this internal victory, starting right now? Well, here are the 4 actionable steps to mastery. Step 1 is honestly where most people fail, usually because of their ego. Start with a demo account. Look, I know trading with fake money feels boring. It doesn't give you that thrilling rush. But listen to me carefully here. A demo account is not just for practicing a strategy. It is a safe sandbox to practice your emotional control without facing financial ruin. If you can't execute a trading plan with fake money without getting angry, impatient, or bored, you will absolutely destroy a real money account, period. Step 2 is practicing that steady emotional baseline. Step 3 is executing your proven strategy flawlessly over and over again. And step 4 is allowing time for your brain to actually build that new dopamine loop for the process, which is what solidifies true rational confidence in your system. Now, I want to issue a very clear warning based on this material. Jumping into a live real money account before you have mastered your psychology is exactly like stepping into a bear trap.
Doing so means you're violating everything we've just discussed. It means you are only focusing on the money. Impatience is the ultimate killer of the normal trader. If you rush the process just because you want to see fast cash returns, you are guaranteeing that you will remain emotional, impulsive, and ultimately unsuccessful. You simply cannot bypass the psychological rewiring process. There are no shortcuts here.
So I want to leave you lingering on this final provocative question. Will you master your mind to trust the setup, or will you let the market master your emotions? Remember that massive 80% slice we looked at earlier? The market is ultimately just a mirror. It perfectly reflects your own psychological flaws, your impatience, and your lack of discipline right back at you. Your moving averages and trend lines, they're only 20% of the puzzle. The real work, the heavy lifting that actually dictates long-term success, is happening right between your ears. Take the time to build your internal discipline, shift your focus completely away from the money, embrace rational risk management, and just watch how dramatically your external results will transform. Keep learning, keep mastering your mind, and thanks for joining me for this explainer. I'll see you next time.